Thank you for joining us today. I'll call the July 11th, 2024 meeting of the Police Advisory and Oversight Board to order. We'll begin with an introduction of board members.
Joanna Johnson.
Tanya Graywind.
Dave Hoganson.
Lucretia King.
And Scott Paul.
The first item is to approve the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't think we had any. The motion carried. The next item is approving the minutes from the last meeting, which I believe was the, I think I have the wrong date. It was June.
So moved.
Thank you. 2024.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And motion's carried. The next item on the agenda, we did have picking a date for the brown bag. We did have a date confirmed during our last meeting, so we're just going to confirm the date. And we're still working on the location, but the date for the brown bag will be August 15th from 5:30 until 7 o'clock. We're looking to hold the brown bag somewhere in South Fargo, just working on that location right now, and we'll make sure to bring that to the attention of the community. The next item on the agenda is a public comment period. Those who wish to address the Police Advisory and Oversight Board must use the sign-in sheet. Speakers must state their name and will be limited to 3 minutes. Comments should not contain profanity or personal attacks. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
Yes, we have Faith Dixon.
Wonderful.
Good afternoon. I didn't come prepared because I just found out that you all will be speaking about an agenda item that concerned myself. And so I didn't come prepared with anything, but I just want to let this board be aware that the trauma that this has caused me and my family. My husband is on his way here, so he won't make it to public comment, but what happened that day has caused me a lot of trauma. It has caused me not only physical, but mental. I have no respect for Fargo Police Department as of May 7th of last year. That went down the drain when they decided to put their hands on me for no apparent reason. I was a good Samaritan and saw a crime being committed, and how they addressed it, and they can blame it on it was chaotic, but from what we hear from them all the time is that they're trained for those chaotic situations. Matter of fact, the chief even takes his troops to chaotic situations to get more training out of his own mouth, but that situation was not chaotic. It was not that chaotic for them to draw guns and put me in double handcuffs and cause me injury to my arm or my wrist. The fact that they admitted to the wrongdoing but won't admit to hurting me, to me, that's just a cop-out. And I want justice for what happened to me. I'm not letting up. I'm not letting go. I don't want a letter being mailed to me. I want a public apology. And I also want other things to be done to make right for what they did to me. And they can't continue to hide behind Nancy with her $74,000 charge to my attorney for information. We still have body cameras that are missing from that day, from the gentleman that actually put his hands on me. I want justice, and I think that this board was created for us, the people, the residents, to get things accomplished without having to pay $74,000 for public information. And I have all of the bills. I have the emails that was sent from the state's attorney or the city attorney requesting $74,000 for me to get information on an injury that they caused to me. It's ridiculous, it's egregious, and it shouldn't happen to anybody, and I want justice.
Thank you. Did we have any other public comment?
None others are signed up, no.
Okay. All right. We'll move to, the next item was, that was listed on the agenda is questions from community members. We actually didn't have any that were submitted this month. So we'll move to the next, and this is police department updates.
Good evening, everyone. Just a couple updates quickly. Our Academy 7 is completing week 6. That's going well. They'll be graduating later this year. Saturday, we're sending our folks out to the RNC in Milwaukee for that event. And then on Sunday afternoon, we have our memorial ceremony here in Commission Chambers. I'd also like to formally invite all of you to attend if you're able to. 4 o'clock here in the Commission just is a one-year memorial to that kind of tragedy that happened last July. And that's all I have for updates for this evening.
All right. Are there any questions from advisory board members? All right. Moving along. The next item is the Fargo Police presentation with Lieutenant Joel Erickson.
Good evening. Lieutenant Joel Erickson. I work in our professional accountability unit. Tonight I'll be giving an overview of Fargo Police Complaint 24-008, which is in reference to Fargo ICR 2023-29172. Start off, we'll talk about our complaint summary. The initial call for service in regards to this incident was on May 4th of 2023. 2 complaint forms were turned into the police department. Those complaint forms were turned in February of 2024 in regards to this specific incident. 1 complaint form was completed by Mr. Dixon and 1 complete form was completed by Ms. Dixon. Once we received those complaint forms, Professional Accountability Unit received those and assigned those complaints to be investigated. That was on February 20th of 2024. There were several allegations that were made in the complaint forms. To summarize some of the allegations that were made, Ms. Dixon alleged that she was unlawfully detained. Officers used force on her while grabbing her wrist, causing severe pain, as well as bending her thumb, and broke her Apple Watch. Mr. Dixon claimed Ms. Dixon was also unlawfully detained, that her watch was broken, and her wrist was swollen and bruised, and he was not provided medical care, and stated he and several other witnesses were not interviewed. Again, that's a summarization of the complaints that we received. Again, we received these in February of 2024. This initial incident was on May 4th of 2023. A little bit of background in regards to this incident, just to give you an understanding of the call for service. Like I mentioned previously, the incident took place on May 4th, 2023. It occurred at approximately 9:24 p.m. in the 400 block of Broadway during the evening hours of downtown, usually a busier time during that time, as well as there's an event going on at the Fargo Theater. It's a decent amount of foot traffic as well as regular traffic. When officers were initially dispatched, it was initially came in as a disturbance. There was more than one caller for this call for service. Reported to officers that potentially 6 people were involved. Another information was also received that it potentially could be 2-on-2. When that first officer arrived on scene, there were approximately 7 to 8 people, including a female that stated one male potentially might have a gun. The initial priority once the officers get on scene is to determine exactly what happened, who's involved, what happened, and obviously if there's a report of a potential gun being involved, that does take precedence as well. Officers located a female who appeared to have some current injuries and bruising around her neck. Officer Lehman recognized the female, knew who she was, and that she was and had been in a relationship with a male that lived in a nearby apartment. Due to the potential allegation that the gun was involved, they contained the entrance as well as the exit of that apartment, while Officer Lehman continued to talk to that female. So that did tie up several officers being at the front of the entrance of that apartment complex, as well as a couple officers being in the back of the exit of that apartment to ensure that that male did not get back out into the public in case a gun was involved. Officer Lehman asked if the male had caused those injuries to her. The female initially denied it. The female's story as to what happened was difficult to understand, changed throughout the whole time we were down there. However, at one point early on during the investigation, she did make reference to Ms. Dixon causing the injuries. It was at that point when the female made the accusation, Officer Lehman asked Officer Poole to detain Ms. Dixon. During this investigation, Ms. Dixon was in handcuffs. That was from approximately 9:36 p.m. to approximately 9:46 p.m. Ms. Dixon did receive medical care in an ambulance from approximately 9:46 p.m. to approximately 10:06 p.m. When Ms. Dixon was in handcuffs, 2 sets of handcuffs, which she alluded to, were used. That is for individuals for comfortability. It's not to apply more restraints. It's so it's not as tight for the individuals. They were also double locked to ensure that they're not going to tighten back up, or when they sit down, that the handcuffs don't tighten. The male party did eventually come down from that apartment complex. He was also detained. He was handcuffed. He was placed in a squad car. He did make several claims of being assaulted, but he did claim that that female party was not the responsible party for who assaulted him. The first officer arrived on scene at approximately 9:31 p.m. So approximately 11 minutes later, 9:42, that is when a supervisor arrived on scene to assist with the officers. At approximately 9:49, the supervisor received video surveillance of the incident on his cell phone from downtown cameras and reviews it with Officer Lehman. The supervisor did go and speak with Ms. Dixon while she was being detained in the ambulance and went over the video surveillance with her, getting her statement as well. Continued to speak with the officers, attempted to speak with another witness as well that was on scene. However, that witness walked away from the supervisor and didn't provide a statement. Continued to work with the officers to determine exactly what happened. At approximately 10:06 p.m., a supervisor was informed that the female recanted her statement about Ms. Dixon, and immediately at that point, Ms. Dixon was told she was no longer detained and that she was free to leave. Based on the investigation, Ms. Dixon and Mr. Dixon were determined at the scene not to be suspects in the case. No charges were ever filed against them. The female and male party that were involved were arrested for simple assault domestic. The male party did plead guilty to disorderly conduct, fighting behavior on August 29th of 2023. Charges were eventually declined against the female. Mr. Dixon, when we initially sent the case report over, was also listed as a victim of simple assault, which the male party also pled guilty to on August 29th of 2023. So with our PAU investigation process, which is covered in policy 1009, which is available to the public, when we receive the complaint, we assign it to get investigated. We look at the alleged policy violations that are being alleged by the individuals that filed the complaint. At that point, we would notify the employee of the alleged policy notifications, as well as a brief description of that alleged allegation. After we notify the employee, we do review the body-worn camera of the incident, as well if there's any fleet camera. What the fleet camera is squad car video, as well as any other video that we do have available to us. We do bring up the officers and interview them, as well as try to interview any other witnesses and any other relevant information, such as any of the memorandums that might have been completed in reference to this complaint, or any other complaint forms that might have been completed. Once we're complete, we do write up an investigative report for this one, 16 to 17 pages with the facts and findings. Once we're done with that, we present that to our executive staff, who makes a recommendation to the chief, who makes the ultimate decision in regards to those reports. Again, there were several allegations that were made for alleged policy violations in reference to this. A majority of the alleged policy violations fall under our standards of conduct policy. That's policy 320, and that has to do with our vision, mission, values of the Fargo Police Department. As you can see here, the three different ones within policy 320. The first one is failure to perform their duties while demonstrating excellent judgment, discretion, and decision-making ability. Second one is unreasonable and unwarranted force to a person encountered or a person under arrest. The third one is exceeding lawful peace officer powers by unreasonable, unlawful, or excessive conduct. And the last one is in regards to policy 600, which has to do with our investigations and looking into our responsibilities when we're investigating a criminal case. With that, subsection B was looked into specifically in regards to officer responsibilities to make reasonable attempts to locate, identify, and interview all victims, complainants, witnesses, and suspects. First part of our investigation, as noted earlier, once on scene, Officer Lehman noticed bruising to a female's neck, indicative of possible aggravated assault. At one point during the interview, when Officer Lehman was asking the female who choked her, she pointed towards where Mr. Dixon and Miss Dixon were standing and stated they were. Officer Lehman informed the female that she was very confused during that interview. Officer Lehman clarified with the female, did ask her if Faith did this to her. The female said yes. Here is the video in which you can see off to the right over here is where Miss Dixon and Mr. Dixon are standing when she says they were.
Out there dragging her in. I have her glasses. They say you got a gun and a knife up there. It's her. It's her.
They are right back over in this area over here.
He was trying to save me.
At the end of it, she said, he was trying to save me. She was referring to the male party that she was with. Play
Out there dragging her in. I have her glasses. They say you got a gun and a knife up there. It's her. It's her. So we were walking. Pause for a second. He was trying to save me.
Let him play. Can we hear the rest of it?
Here is on the second video. You can see here, this is where she is asked if Faith did this. She does say yes.
I need some little roses. I do apologize. The couple. So did Faith do this to you? Yeah.
When you give victims names?
I need some little roses. I do apologize. The couple. So did Faith do this to you? Yes.
Did Faith do that to you? You helped her identify that, and she identified she was drunk as a skunk, and you helped
Continuing
her
on.
call my name.
With this, Officer Lehman
Violation. I don't care what y'all try to say. Y'all violated me.
asked
I didn't
Officer
know my
Poole
name.
to detain Miss Dixon for aggravated assault. Due to having reasonable suspicion she was potentially involved in an assault. So he continued on with the investigation. Officer Poole and Officer Lewis detained Miss Dixon and placed her into handcuffs. As mentioned earlier, they did use 2 sets of handcuffs, double locked the handcuffs. There appeared to be no force utilized, and Miss Dixon was cooperative.
And I called my attorney.
Hold on here one second.
Lying. All y'all do is lie. You know what they did to me. You know what they did.
Here is a video of when they placed her into handcuffs.
How they know it got I don't think
Faith,
no.
can you put your hands behind your back for me?
What?
You're being detained right now.
Why am I being detained?
For what? For assault. Back up.
Assault?
on who?
What are you talking about?
Hold on, wait.
What are you talking about? I didn't do
Hold
nothing.
on. Can you
Wait a
figure it
minute.
out? Wait, can you?
What are you talking about? Assault?
Can you?
I never touched anybody.
All I'm hey, put your camera. I'm asking. All I'm asking you to do is talk to me. I need
How am I getting assault? I never touched anybody.
You want to give your husband your phone?
No, I want to know why I'm being detained. My husband is the one that got hit.
Okay.
Call West, call Mama and Diddy.
Y'all about to make a very big mistake. It's just detainment. This guy.
Call West.
Look at my arm. Look at my other arm.
I'm the one that's host. Try to find 911. How am I being detained?
Turn your hand a little bit for me.
We see this guy beating his girl with tagged her right in the face. So
Here they're double locking the cuffs.
You
As you
got
can
three
see.
cameras.
Went over
Yep.
there, and this-
That's what I'm saying. We'll get it figured out. So it's nothing
Don't do
to.
that, don't do that, don't do that.
Never got my husband's statement.
You know the code. I need you to listen. Okay, I'm gonna be detained where? Why am I going to? Why am I being? I want a captain. I want the captain or the chief.
We gotta start now.
How's that right, Mayor? How's it right?
All right. Officer Poole and Officer Lewis walked Miss Dixon over to the squad car. While walking her over to the squad car, she requested an ambulance due to say she was having a panic attack. Officers did call for an ambulance to come to the scene. Officers allowed Miss Dixon to sit in the squad car on her own free will. There was no force used by officers to sit in the squad.
Stop lying. Y'all made me sit in that car,
Here.
and I called my attorney.
Here's a video of when she was placed in the squad car.
Stop lying.
I need an ambulance here because I'm having a panicking.
We'll call one.
I'm
We're gonna put you in
panicking
the car
right
now.
now. How am I being detained? I'm the one that called the police or tried to call the police.
If you guys are detained right now, should you be telling her why?
Exactly.
We told her.
No, I don't know why.
Told you for
Faith?
assault.
Okay.
How am
Figure it out.
I never touched anybody.
Step away, Brandon. Step away, Brandon. I
And
told her.
I'm an activist, and y'all know how you tell.
Take a sit.
Thank you. Can you tell
She's
him
detained for assault.
how did I insult somebody and where did I
That's what
assault?
we're figuring
The
that
girl
out.
just said that I never assaulted her
Okay.
or
Okay,
insulted anybody.
That's what we're trying to figure out.
Hey,
Just take a seat for a minute. We'll get an ambulance over here. Okay?
right, I get hit.
Right, my
She don't
husband
do
get
nothing,
hit.
and you got her in handcuffs.
How's that on my own free will?
Once the ambulance arrived, Miss Dixon was taken out of the squad car. Once out of the squad car, she was taken out of handcuffs and was able to get into the ambulance for medical care. This was approximately 10 minutes after she was placed into handcuffs. Based on the body-worn camera, her watch was still intact. I will pause it at 21:46:19 in the video to show that the watch was intact and turned on.
I don't trust y'all.
You to do what they asked.
Just back up a little bit for me, okay?
Put the phone in my bra.
He hung up.
Where's Wes?
I don't know.
Can you give me a little light?
Don't touch me.
Please, give me a
I don't want him
flashlight.
to
Please give me a
touch
flashlight.
me.
I can't see. I can't see.
No.
Faith, I just can't see. Can you just give me a
I don't
flashlight?
want them to touch me.
Do you want me to leave the cuffs on?
Handcuffs off.
I want him to touch me. I don't want him to touch me.
He's not touching you, Faith. I'm just taking your
Don't
handcuffs.
you dare touch me. Oh, yes. We know who you are.
Just a little bit previous here is when you can see the watch appears to be working at this point in time. This is the last time that the handcuffs were placed on before she received medical care.
Alright, I gotta take the other one off, Faith.
You know what you
Faith,
did
I
to
gotta
my
take-
arm.
Faith, I gotta take the other one off. Thanks.
Where's the sergeant at and the captain that's supposed to be down here? Because I requested one.
They're down there.
It's fake.
Alright,
Yes.
Faith, I'm not done.
Checked out by the paramedics.
Yes, I do, because I can't
Faith,
breathe.
Faith, I'm not done.
So what's going on?
I asked and I moved this.
Okay.
And my I don't trust.
There were several allegations that were made in the complaint. She mentioned that Officer Poole stated to stop resisting. She said she immediately said, "I'm not resisting," and that Officer Poole bent her thumb and used force while grabbing her wrist, causing severe pain. Based on the review of the body-worn camera, there was not evidence to support this. She alleged Officer Poole stated, "We have to protect ourselves against you." On review of the body-worn camera, she was placed into handcuffs. Officer Poole informed me, that she was placed into handcuffs for officer safety concerns on top of being detained for an assault investigation. In the complaint form, it was mentioned that she was repeatedly coughing and feeling faintish in the back of the squad car. We did provide medical care. An ambulance was called down to the scene based on body-worn camera. There was no evidence to support that she was repeatedly coughing while she was in the back of the squad car. However, potentially while she was in the ambulance. There was allegation that Apple smartwatch was broken. Last time when the handcuffs were taken off, that is seen to be intact, as well as turned on when the officers were taking the handcuffs off. There was a complaint that was also filed by Mr. Dixon. A majority of his issues were addressed previously with Ms. Dixon's complaint. He inquired about the body-worn camera. All body-worn camera recordings for the officers for this incident have been logged into our evidence.com system. Mr. Dixon was interviewed by an officer on scene. Witnesses who remained on scene were interviewed. Initially, officers were concerned, obviously, with the potential allegation of a firearm. Several officers were at the entrance and exit of the residence. Several witnesses left the scene. We did end up interviewing 5 different individuals, witnesses for this incident, as well as getting video from the downtown camera, as well as getting video from another witness that was on scene. In regards to medical care, Mr. Dixon was offered, when he was interviewed, medical care. On this next video, you'll be able to see that he was offered by an officer that did the interview with Mr. Dixon if he wanted medical care.
Did you need any medical attention?
I need to find out what's going on with Faye first,
Okay.
but I'm probably gonna get checked out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you want us to call an ambulance for you?
Not right, not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
So with this, even before this incident, we're always looking to continually to improve at the police department. Issues were identified in our training in relation to our contacts and temporary detention policy. To address this, Chief Sobalski did provide training to the department at a quarterly training session in October of 2022. As I mentioned, we're always continually working to improve our policy 419, which covers our contacts and temporary detention, as well as our policy 302, handcuffing and restraints, and policy 311, search and seizure, were revised prior to us receiving this complaint. All of our supervisors, our training officers, as well as our officers were trained on the new policies, which were published in January of 2024. And all those policies are on our website. I'll go into a little bit more into policy 419. Again, this was published in January of 2024. So after this incident, but before we received the complaint in regards to contacts and temporary detentions. So with the temporary detention, what that is, it's a brief detainment of an individual in a public place, whether on foot or in a vehicle, based on reasonable suspicion. And I'll cover with you what reasonable suspicion is. That purpose of that temporary detention is to determine the individual's identity and explanation of their actions in order to resolve the officer's suspicion. Although a person subject to temporary detention may be handcuffed in accordance with specific legal parameters and department training, it is not an arrest. However, if probable cause is developed during the temporary detention, it may evolve into an arrest. So there's several levels of burden of proof. The lowest one being reasonable suspicion. That is what is needed for a temporary detention as outlined in the policy. Also common for reasonable suspicion is for a traffic stop. That's what's needed. Probable cause, if you're going to be making an arrest, that is what's needed for an arrest, as well as we typically see it is for search warrants. You also have preponderance of evidence, clear and convincing, and proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which is needed in a criminal proceeding. So reasonable suspicion, what that is articulable facts that a person has or is about to commit a crime and forms a basis to conduct temporary detention. So it's more than just a hunch. Probable cause is when a reasonable person is to believe a person committed or is committing a specific crime and therefore forms that basis to make that arrest. Within our temporary detention and contacts policy also covers specific circumstances in which we place individuals into handcuffs. Individuals who are temporarily detained may be placed into handcuff restraints under specific and articulable circumstances. So again, articulable circumstances, so not just trying to be specific, including but not limited to Individual is verbally or physically uncooperative, fails to follow officer directions, or is otherwise disorderly obstructing the officer's lawful function. Individual continues to place hands in pocket or moves about attempting to identify an escape path, or multiple individuals are involved in disorderly behavior. An investigation is needed in order to establish a victim and or a suspect. I included this. I know there's questions in the past in regards to when you can place an individual into handcuffs in regards to a temporary detention. Again, this policy was put into place in January of 2024. I wanted to touch base in regards to the outcome of the complaint. As mentioned in the first slide, there's several allegations as well as alleged policy violations. With this, for Officer Lehman, there's potential of 2 policy violations. The first one being policy 600. That covers the investigation and prosecution, deals with interviewing of witnesses, as well as policy 320.5.10 subsection D. That is going to be exceeding lawful powers. For Officer Lehman, she was exonerated. Just to give you some definition of what that means, it's when the investigation discloses the alleged act occurred, but the act was justified, lawful, proper, and within the scope of the department's policies, rules, procedures, directives, or the City of Fargo employment policies. As mentioned throughout this presentation, Officer Lehman responded to a disturbance or a fight in the 400 block of Broadway. She noticed that bruising to the female's neck. She did make claims that Ms. Dixon assaulted her. Based on those articulable facts, she established reasonable suspicion to believe that Ms. Dixon may be involved, and she was detained. She did direct Officer Poole to detain Ms. Dixon. However, she never directed her to be placed into handcuffs. Officer Lehman, she was the first officer on scene. She wrote the original report. Mr. Dixon was interviewed by officers on scene. Supplements were completed with his statement, as well as other witness statements from individuals on scene. Officer Lehman, she has a total of, at the time, 1 year of experience with the Fargo Police Department. Officer Lewis is looked at for alleged violation of policy 320.5.10, subsection C, and that's at unreasonable and unwarranted force. For his, it was found to be not sustained. When the investigation discloses there's insufficient evidence to sustain the complaint or fully exonerate the member, he responded to a physical fight, the same disturbance. He assisted Officer Poole in detaining Ms. Dixon. Officer Poole was the officer that received the information to detain Ms. Dixon, and Officer Poole was also the lead officer in detaining Ms. Dixon. Officer Lewis had 1 year of experience at the time of this call. The last slide is in regards to Officer Poole. 2 different policy violations we looked at for him. One being the same one for Officer Lewis, with our standards of conduct policy, subsection C. And the last one being subsection B, which is failure to perform your duties while demonstrating excellent judgment, discretion, decision-making abilities. On subsection C, for 320, that was not sustained. However, for subsection B, for policy 320, that was sustained. And that's when the investigation discloses sufficient evidence to establish an act occurred and constitute a violation of policy, procedure, or otherwise prohibited misconduct. What he received for that was an oral reprimand, as well as a training and policy review. So with the training and policy review, a shift commander, someone from our training and development unit, go down with the officer, speak with them, have a conversation, go over the incident, and talk with them about what we can do better the next time. Well, handcuffing and temporary detentions may be allowed, as we talked about previously on a different slide. There's certain circumstances in which we should be handcuffing. Discretion is based on those circumstances present. During this incident, the fight was concluded. Ms. Dixon was also not showing signs she would be a safety risk to herself, police officer, or others, and that ultimately played a role in why that one was sustained, and he received the oral reprimand as well as training and policy review. Officer Poole, he has, at the time, 2 years of experience with the Fargo Police Department. Questions do you have?
I have a question. Could you tell me, so when you detain someone and you handcuff them or not, and then you do your investigation, you figure something out, you release them. How many times, I mean, is this a really common thing in your work day or your work week or your work month? Like how frequent is it that you have to detain someone till you clear something up?
I think it's a pretty common occurrence in which we're trying to determine what exactly is going on. A lot of times when we get to a scene, there's many variations of what happened. So we're trying to determine who's a victim, who's a suspect, whose story is correct, with all the information that we can obtain throughout the investigation. Now, not every time, as I outlined, there's certain circumstances in which we place somebody into handcuffs, which everyone has been trained on. So that's not occurring by any means very often or all the time. However, if someone's going to be under arrest, they are placed into handcuffs when they're going to be placed under arrest, and we have the probable cause to arrest somebody.
So it's pretty common for you to detain people while you figure stuff out.
Yes, because we want to make it clear that they're not free to leave, because we still need to continue
Right.
with the investigation.
And they're not always handcuffed, but sometimes they are.
Correct.
Okay. And there's no, just, do you think some officers just maybe handcuff out of habit or learning, or is that just like you had set up there, like, you know, was it necessary to handcuff versus, you know, the fight was over, you know?
And we've been continuing to train on that. With this policy, it came out in January. However, there's training back in October of 2022. It's one of the things that was identified that we needed to continue to address as far as being able to articulate and have those specific articulable facts when we're placing someone into handcuffs. So that's been a continued process. Training that's been done at shift briefings, not only with our supervisors, but with our training officers, which is a key component because they're training our new officers as well as all other officers.
So are you trying to move away from handcuffing during detaining unless there's a reasonable suspicion, like somebody might flee or somebody's too agitated or?
With the three circumstances that I mentioned here in the temporary detention, these would be the certain times in which we would place somebody into handcuffs, not necessarily moving away from handcuffing, but having those articulable facts and the reasoning why we would be placing someone into handcuffs when they're being temporarily detained.
Okay. So can I just verify, I'm sorry, can I just verify, so 419 was.
Correct, yep, policy
Added,
419.
Was edited, the policy was edited to try to reduce the incidence of handcuffing? Would you say?
We're always trying to provide better guidance and direction to the officers, so it kind of lays it out. So this policy was one that was revised to give them more specific guidance in regards to defining temporary detention as well as going into those specific circumstances to make it more clear for the officers while they're out on these calls. A lot of them are complex, they're fast moving, very fast paced. So they have that outline for them as to when they can utilize handcuffs for temporary detention.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. I'm very disturbed by what I saw, and I'm very curious. But you said sometimes you handcuff and sometimes you don't. Yes?
Correct, based on for temporary detention, with these that are outlined here, that would be differentiating between when someone's handcuffed or not. With the temporary detention, they might not be free to leave, but they're not handcuffed in certain circumstances.
So out of curiosity, do you think as if she was handcuffed just because she's Faith Dixon?
At this point in time, there was training that was done in regards to this. There was an allegation of an aggravated assault, as well as several different factors that went into it. I don't believe that was played into it, but I can't say what the officer was thinking at that point in time.
Okay. Another thing that concerns me that I was watching is being a man of color. I'm thinking about this resistance, and I really didn't see any of that. So I'm just curious on on how that played out. Just being Faith Dixon. And you were saying as if she was resisting and so forth.
No, I said she wasn't resisting.
Also, she wasn't resisting.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Faith was never resisting during
Okay.
this.
Oh, thank you.
I have a couple of questions, and we have these pictures here that Faith gave to the board. And bruises like this does not come if handcuffs are not very tight. I'm having a very big issue with how she was handcuffed and handled when she was helping in a situation. And this training policy 419 that came about in January, right? What brought on this change, this policy to come about?
There was before this, Chief had already, in October of 2022, did training with the police department. We noticed it as something that was identified that we wanted to continue to work on and provide more guidance to the officers with handcuffing. This policy is something that's not drafted and done overnight, so those changes were completed throughout 2023, went into effect in January 2024.
I'm having a big issue since January myself with how much damage an officer can do to innocent civilians by using substantial force. Civilians can be arrested, they can be jailed, and no one loses their job. This is what I've known personally since January. I've had officers visit me at my job to make sure that I know they're one of the good ones. So this thought of two presentations ago of not being able to distinguish persons of color, that's not valid in my mind, because this person came to my job in plain clothes to make sure I knew he was one of the good ones. There's a handful of officers since January that made themselves to me to let me know that they're one of the good ones. So there is an issue in Fargo PD with use of force. Unfortunately, most of the cases are with persons of color. I have great issue with this. This training came out in January because of an event. These events, these arrests, these situations are public events. People's reputations are ruined, their jobs, they're injured, they're damaged. They're put in fear of people who are entrusted to protect all of their citizens. I have a great issue with that. And when they are found to have broken policy, the punishment to me is equal to a slap on the wrist. It's not gonna say another officer is not gonna do it again, because since January, this incident happened in May, so it was repeated.
May of last year, 23.
Oh, well, May of last year, well then the January incident should not have happened. It was still repeated. When it's found that they have damaged civilians in their encounters, the apologies come like hush notes, hush phone calls. These events are public. The apologies should be public also. So the same public that saw them taken down, handcuffed, injured, defamed, should be able to see them exonerated. It should not be a quiet thing. This is how you build trust in the community, in the whole community. We must do better. And at 53, I have 47 years to see we do better. That's all I have to say.
So how often is training done? what kind of training is it? Where is it this is consistently and continuously going on? I'm very curious. And I concur, it must stop.
Sorry, I have a question. I know that it was brought up a couple times regarding the 2 sets of handcuffs and then the double lock, and I was wondering if you could explain that again.
Yes, so for one set of handcuffs, typically used for someone that doesn't have, or is more flexible, get their hands behind their backs. For 2 sets of handcuffs, it's more for comfortability, to be able to, it's not as tight for an individual if they're 1 set of handcuffs. Being able to have 2 sets of handcuffs, their arms are not going to be as tight behind them. When it's double locked, what that means, once we put the handcuffs on, they're not going to get any more tighter. So when they're double locked, they're not going to tighten up.
So yeah, I guess what Lucretia was showing with the pictures, I was just wondering if it was meant to lock it, then how does that happen? I mean, is that a common occurrence with people that they get the bruising from the?
No, but again, we didn't receive this complaint until February of 24, and this incident happened on May 4th of 2023. The video shows the handcuffs coming off. I can show what the wrists look like at that point in time. Now bruising can occur later, but I can show the video of placing the handcuffs on. There does not appear to be any resistance by Faith or.
But in that video you showed, you do see the imprint of the handcuff around her wrist. So,
and that's typical when you're sitting back in a squad car to have an impression from a handcuff when you're sitting back into a squad car.
But impressions do leave bruises, right?
They can, yes.
I'm a little fuzzy on the policy change. So this is what it is currently. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I just wanted to go over the current policy.
Yep. So in May of 23, when this incident occurred, what was the difference? What did the policy change to this? What did it say before?
I don't have the exact specifics. It didn't outline necessarily the specifics that we have now in regards to handcuffing.
Okay.
Chief went over his guidance in October of 2022 at a quarterly training, and then continued to work on the policy going forward for the policy updates with the 4 different policies that were ultimately published in January 2024.
So in general, when this incident occurred, the policy was not as specific as it is today. Is that correct?
That would be correct, Chief. I don't know if you have.
Is that a fair statement?
Yes. The original policy did not have this section in there at all, so there was no differentiation between when someone could or could not be handcuffed during temporary detention, but that should be a rare occurrence and not a common occurrence. So that was the focus of the training and some of the other things that we were looking at as that came to our attention to address this specifically, because I think it is important. As Lucy said here, that we are knowledgeable and competent in our use of force, and that we only, or handcuffing, and that we only do that when it's absolutely necessary. The previous policy was more discretionary in nature, and I, along with the rest of our executive staff, felt that we needed to make that more specific in order to prevent this, because in this instance, there was no necessity to handcuff her whatsoever. She could have been detained without the use of cuffs, and so that there's really no argument about that. She wasn't uncooperative or combative, and so the officer could have simply detained her verbally and spoke with her while the rest of the information was obtained by the other officers before allowing them an opportunity to decide if and who should be arrested moving forward.
So it's clear that the position of the Fargo Police Department is that she shouldn't have been handcuffed while she was detained. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Was this incident the impetus for changing the policy?
No. In fact, we didn't even know about this incident, this particular incident, until February of '24. We had been working on this since the training in '22. I provide the training to all of the recruit classes when they come in. And as instances, and so our review process involves internal complaints and training and things of that nature. And as we started to see instances where there were detentions and people were handcuffed and asking questions about why in certain instances someone was handcuffed when, again, a situation not involving one of these three criteria, we identified a training issue that needed to be corrected. And we worked on that throughout 2023 and ultimately not only updated this policy, but our search and seizure policy in terms of pushing out through training bulletins updates to case law, keeping our officers apprised of that, handcuffing and restraints as well. There were some updates there to, again, prevent unnecessary handcuffing of people in these situations. And so that was something that we as a department had identified and we were working on correcting and ultimately updated those policies to be more stringent than they previously were for all of those reasons.
And I think it's clearly a step in the right direction. It's unfortunate that the policy wasn't in place when this incident happened. I'll be the first person to admit that my work requires me to travel a lot, so I don't remember in the January timeframe, was there any sort of update given to the board that this policy had changed?
No.
No, okay. Is it fair to request in the future when a policy that it could be controversial like that we get that information?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, we update policies on a regular basis. Sometimes it's simple changes. Sometimes this obviously is a significant policy, and you can certainly bring those forward and keep you apprised of all of that, make sure that there's an understanding relative to that. And I think the other piece, I guess, it's important for us to know these things sooner rather than later so that we can take effective measures. And, again, this is not a good example of how we should be conducting ourselves. But we also need to have someone come forward and say, here's the situation. We would have had the opportunity to actually see or take photos of any injuries at that time. And, at this juncture, 9 months later, it's really hard to attribute that to the incident or what the significance of that really is. And so that makes it a little more difficult as well in this particular case. And that's also a factor in the disciplinary decision in terms of the length of time and the fact that really the policy was updated along those lines that people had received that training.
Can I say something, please? Do you have any questions? I want to state for the record that the only reason that the complaint form did not go in on May 4th is because I had sought an attorney. Nancy, the mayor, Chief Sabowski was all served with a cease and desist order in January. But I was not allowed to talk about it. All the departments got that same cease and desist through the city of Fargo. That was the only reason you didn't get the complaint form, because a lawsuit had already started for force. So please don't say that I waited almost a year to state that, because I received several calls from city employees stating that they got the cease and desist letter and that they was not allowed to shred anything, to delete anything that had Faith Dixon on it. I was not allowed to talk about the situation to the media. My family wasn't able to talk to the media. They came to our homes. We were not allowed to speak. So I want to put that out there for the record. Nancy, you are very aware of what happened because you sent the $74,000 invoice in January stating that they was not going to release any information. Mayor, you also know that because you also talked to me and said you couldn't talk to me because I had an attorney. So please, let's not play games. That's the only reason why I was not allowed. And you can smile, baby. You can smile because I know you know it's funny.
We appreciate your passion on this, Faith, and I want you to know that. But in order for us to, we wanted to review this based on your comments that you provided and the pictures. And so just know that we're trying to do what we can to bring to light issues. And we want to make sure that we keep that opportunity available.
I understand you think it's a passion, but it's not a passion. It was my life.
I agree. I understand. I'm not trying to diminish that in any way. I just want to make sure that we're able to keep the lines of communication open.
Right. So, and the one thing is that Officer Poole was the one and the officer who was in the shooting of the Shane Netterfield, the Native American man that was shot and murdered. That was the same officer that was amongst those ones that was also being investigated. And I do believe that is why I was detained the way that I was detained. I have been in numerous occasions downtown where I have continued to go down there with my husband, that I have seen people being arrested or detained with one set of cuffs. They even walked the gentleman home from being drunk, walked him to his safety. But you used double cuffs on me. The watch was broken in the ambulance. It fell off once they took the cuffs off, and I got to the ambulance, and they took my pulse. That's when the watch fell off. Nobody did the ambulance be investigated. Nobody asked them anything. They asked me to go to the hospital, but my mother's a nurse and took me to the ER right when I left the scene. So I just want to put that out there, that please, and again, we don't have Officer Poole's body cam, Tanya. That's the body cam that's missing. And that's the body cam where you can hear Officer Poole tell me the reason why I'm being detained is because the police are protecting themselves. And that's the video that I would like to be released. And that's the video that we're still waiting for, Nancy. Thank you.
All right. Was there any
Thank
other
you.
questions? All right. With that, I will, let's see. If there's no other business, that we will call the meeting of the Police Advisory Oversight Board to adjourn. Our next meeting is scheduled for August 8th, 2024, here at City Chambers. Thank you.